This set of episodes was streamed and recorded in between 2020 and 2021. It took me this long to upload them, partly because life happened and partly because I'm a slow video editor. Either way, I hope you enjoy this episode. If you don't, please send it to someone who will.
Am I audible? Do I sound like you can hear me clearly? Why can't you see me?
I can't see you too well, but I can hear you.
Wave your hand. Yes. I see you move. I see you move. It works. Nobody moved. Nobody moved from wherever they are. Everybody, all of you are in the right place.
This is take 33 of Stories with Shastri, and I have Anand Mendoza on board, and he is someone I have had some very beautiful conversations with, and very contradicting opinions also. So that always makes it very interesting. I asked Anand to describe himself, and this is how he does it. He says, "Hi, I'm Anand Mendoza. I'm a part of the visiting faculty at the Symbiosis Institute of Liberal Arts during the day, but I moonlight as an obnoxious nerd who will deconstruct everything I see until it makes no sense at all. I have one foot in psychology and dip my other foot in anything that makes even a remote claim of order in the universe." And I agree. I do. It sounds a lot like Anand, but I'm just going to wait till we bring him on board. Hi.
Hi.
So, since I already know you, it will be, and I've already read out the bio, it would be nicer if you could speak a little more about yourself for people who don't know you. Because I see that bio and I just said that it sounds like Anand, but how would you describe yourself in words other than what you said?
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Anand Mendoza. Yeah, I am a teacher at a college right now, but that's just my day job. And for the rest of my time, I think I basically just love learning about different things. And so I'd say that I'm a compulsive learner. And I think that that pretty much sums up everything I do. If I find something that I find interesting, I'm just going to spend hours together just learning about it. And I think that is one of the reasons I'm here on this call, because tend to have a lot of opinions because of that. But there's also the idea that because I'm constantly learning, I'm never going to be really sure of any of these opinions. So I think that's also a point of this discussion where I'm hoping you will change some of my opinions. So I think that is how I did it.
You're hoping I would change some of your opinions?
We'll see.
Wow, what a pedestal. Okay. I'm really loving it. Okay, so what was the last thing, since you said you're a compulsive learner, what was the last thing you picked up and, compulsively learned and spent hours on?
Compulsively learned and spent hours on. To be honest, I've been trying to read up on what we decided already, because that I was a little unsure about how it sounds. So I think I was spending most of my time reading that. But before that, there's a place that I'm at actually right now. I've been staying here for about 6 months. And over here, the main exploration that we really do is into exploring feelings and exploring the individual's experience of things, right? Beyond theory, beyond structures, and beyond society in that sense. So it's this quaint little place outside of Karnataka. It's on the border of Karnataka and Andhra, and that's where I'm staying right now. And so I think this is what I've been learning the most, which is honestly sitting in silence, which is far more difficult than I ever thought it would be, because we tend to fill our silences with something, either telling ourselves a story, listening to music, and just genuinely trying to occupy our mind with some idea of productivity in some way, right? And so the productivity doesn't even necessarily supposed to be economic productivity. That's the way I think we think of productivity. But we're productive in any other way. That is, okay, I'll try and solve this problem I have with this person. I will try and solve this anxious thought that I've been having. I will try and make myself feel better. Oh, I'm going to try and make myself feel calm since I'm meditating, right? That's the mission. So then meditation becomes a goal rather than actually just sitting. So I think that's been the major exploration. I think I failed pretty badly at it though. So I don't have many updates in that regard about it.
What's the name of the place?
The place is Neredu. And it's a meditation center, for the lack of a better word to describe it.
I know the name. I was just asking for the people listening and watching.
Yeah.
It was just to get us into the flow of this. So since today's topic is whether knowledge is power, right? And I wanted to understand what, according to you, is knowledge and what, according to you, is power. And also, do you think that these two words are synonymous, or what they represent are synonymous?
So yes, I don't think that I have a particular perspective on this. I think it's more that I've learned other people's perspective. So mine would then be a mishmash. And so the perspective that I really, who's somebody who I really think said a lot of nice things about this was Michel Foucault. Who he's a philosopher who wrote basically endlessly about power and knowledge. He's famous for his power knowledge theory. And I really like the way he talks about it because it's not knowledge in the traditional sense that we understand it. Because how do we think of knowledge? It's information, right? If I learn something, I now have knowledge. But to Foucault, he was less interested in that fact-based knowledge and a more dynamic, free-flowing knowledge, which is the knowledge of a situation that you're in. And according to him, and according to me, I would say right now, that is power. It's not actually knowing something, it's knowing how everybody else thinks of something. And that would be knowledge. You know? I kind of teach this to my students. So there's this blueprint that I have for how I walk them down to it. And the first most important question that I generally ask them is, how would you describe power? You know, and most of the time, power is described as, yeah, this is this force. It's this thing that gives me dominance over you. It means that you have to listen to me. And that I would generally like, I think people describe it as either physical strength or this societal kind of strength where you're like a really powerful person and there's a really weak person, you know. And it's sad because I feel like most people who study power end up like starting to say, hey, I don't want power. Power becomes like this dirty word for them. And that's really sad, right? Because that's not fundamentally true. Power can't be dirty. Power exists. You have to learn to accept it in some sense. So in that sense, that's the first thing I ask my students is whether I have power over them. And they say yes, that I'm their teacher, they're my student, and there's this relationship of power dynamic that happens. And I ask them whether they feel like it's an unfair power, and most of the time they say no, because they honestly can't say yes, because what are they going to tell me that I'm unfair? So, anyways, what we realize from that though is that they kind of trust me in that situation, and that is why I have power, right? They trust me to know something that they don't, and they trust me to want to teach them, and that is why they will give me extra trust in the situation to make a decision, to decide what they're going to learn, to decide where the topic's going to go. And to me, that is fundamentally like the basis of power. It's power is trust in that sense. You know, so even when we talk about physical strength, power is trust that the other person can beat you. That's the trust that forms. So yeah, I would say the power is trust. And that's why it suddenly makes sense, right? That if there's a person who knows the situation and knows how people are think and knows how people are, it is easy for them to gain that trust. And I would say that's where that relationship between knowledge and power actually comes down. It's not actual information.
But do you think they're synonymous?
I don't know whether they're perfectly synonymous. I think at a lot of times there's a lot of overlap, but it's not necessarily always the situation. A lot of times, honestly, you could be exercising your. I think you're talking about awareness here, about whether you know something and does that give you power. But a very good example I can think of, right, is take a situation where you are alone in maybe a city that you've never been to. You don't know anybody there. You've been robbed. You've probably been beaten. You've probably gone through the rain and you look very disheveled and very rugged. And you go and ask somebody for help. And you know for a fact that you're going to find somebody to help you. And somebody is going to say, okay, this is a person in distress. The way you sound makes them think that you're a person who's not actually, a homeless person. Yeah, that you're actually somebody of status and stature in the societal classes that we have. And the first instinct we have is, okay, maybe it's your English. So let's imagine that you speak in the regional language. It is still your accent that comes out that makes them more comfortable in helping you, right? They're not going to mistake you for a person from a lower class. And in that sense, that is power and knowledge acting. That is your knowledge of the circumstances, even if you don't really know that you actually have one. There's a context, you feel like you are owed help. And because you feel like you are owed help, people will help you. But you take the same situation and you put a person from from a slum who's never gone to school, who's never actually been able to learn English, learn about the structure of society the way we do, in the limited way we do. It's still change. The likelihood of somebody helping them is very low. Most people will chase them away and tell them, don't dirty my area. And to me, that's a very indicative example of knowledge acting.
That's a very interesting example. I've had a lot of academia related examples or literature related examples. Like you read books, that is power. You write, that is power. You read, that is power. So I think that was a lovely example. I have a question about what you said about your conversation with your students before I go back to what we were originally talking about. Was you said that do I have power over you, right? And you said you spoke about trust. So do you think social contracts are what or whatever we think is a social contract between two people, or is that a factor that plays in power dynamics?
The social contract is very simple, right? It's honestly a universal idea. You don't take my stuff, I don't take your stuff. That's the social contract that we formed as a species. Everything beyond that has nothing to do with that social contract because we're violating that every day.
So you said the whole thing is I don't take your stuff, you don't take my stuff, right?
Yeah.
So when you say stuff, what are you talking about? Like a brief idea of that before we go back.
I think the more colloquial understanding, which is the important one, because I think that's how everybody runs their lives with, is property.
Right.
But I think that as you get higher and higher up the human food chain, it slowly transcends property. And that's why I think at a place like where I teach, we actually, the stuff that we talk about is dignity and respect, which is something that is totally unavailable to the lower classes. It's not even considered to be important in those
Yeah.
situations. And it's a need based thing, I think. So, yeah, I think depending on the strata of society that you come from, your stuff will be different.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Coming back to what you said about Michelle Foucault, how do you separate your idea of the truth, right, or of what you think is the truth, from the knowledge that others are imparting?
So, how do I distinguish whether somebody's telling me something that's true or not?
No, I mean, how do you detach yourself from it in terms of understanding that this is coming from an external source and not from within?
Hmm.
Or when I say that, I mean that let's say you, like you said, you read a lot of Michel Foucault's work, right? So how, when you're reading it, how do you separate your sense of self?
Okay.
And how do you detach when you're reading it and look at it from a what they would call a objective point of view or a third person's point of view,
Mhm.
rather than it being a dialogue between you and the writer or the thing?
So, I don't think that one can really detach from the truth. Like when we talk about facts or knowledge or information, and there's this general idea that you have even when you talk about the empirical or the scientific method, which is, you detach yourself from a situation and you observe the facts. And I think that works really well when you don't feel like the facts affect your life. So if I am going to talk about class struggle, it's very easy for me to detach and be objective about it because it has nothing to do with me. So in that sense, I can say, hey, yeah, you need to be objective. That's the only way you know about the truth. The only way you'll see reality going forward. But when it is a situation which is closer to home, which does feel you feel like impacts you directly, this whole idea of trying to detach ends up being more apathetic than actually detachment. You're not separating yourself from the situation. You're redundating the situation. You're acting like the situation isn't real enough, and that's the only way you can really detach. Because if not, it affects you directly, and then you're actually actively hurting yourself, right? So I don't think you should detach yourself from the truth, and I don't think that you should consider the truth to be this thing that is there for you to know. You have to more focus on your relationship with the truth, and because honestly, how are you going to really ever know if anything's true, right? You take philosophy, the first thing you learn is nothing's true, everything's a lie, everything's a
Yeah.
social construct. And so you should be less focused on finding truth and more focused on understanding just your relationship with truth. And that I think helps you navigate life better.
When you said nothing is true, it reminds me of this meme where so there's a Venn diagram of philosophers, therapists, and Backstreet Boys fans that says "Tell me why," and then every time I think of it, my mind goes to that hamster shaking, hamster or guinea pig, I don't know what. But I'm glad you mentioned facts because I want to understand how and when is fact checking or checking the source of your information necessary.
I don't think I have that figured out, to be told. I'm pretty sure I've consumed false news without realizing. Um, but the yardstick I have, Jenny, which I think is reasonable enough. So I will tell you guys, and you all can decide whether it's reasonable enough for you to run with. Is there's a fact doesn't exist on its own. A fact exists within, like I would say, a crowd of other facts that you already have. You know, and at any given point in your life, you must always be wearing your scientific hat and testing the truth or the veracity of whatever you're doing. You know, so at every given point, you should be challenging your own belief or checking whether you're right about what you believe should happen in a particular situation. So let's say that you find something new. Uh, at that point, how do you integrate it? You know, so what I generally do is I have a narrative, and this is what I teach my students also, that you kind of have to use all your information to structure it as a story. So that is what will help you place new information into it. If you don't have a story, if you just have a random collection of facts, you have a problem. Because then when there's a new fact, you have no option but to just collate it into that data, add it to your collection, and eventually you just really don't know whether there's something in your data is actually factual or whether it's a mistake that you just added in. So what you do is every new fact that you find, you kind of compare it to the narrative that you have. And if it doesn't match the narrative, you have an idea that something's wrong. Either the fact is not true or the narrative is wrong. You know, to give you like I think this is too theoretical. So I think I would give you like an example, which is if somebody came to me and said that the moon landing was fake, and that Stanley Kubrick filmed it in a film studio and all. At that point, I can't just take in that information and assume that that's true. I'm going to look at my history of what all I know about like anything, right? I know a little bit about filmmaking, not enough to call myself anything remotely a filmmaker, but enough to know that it wasn't possible in a lot of ways to be shooting what they did at that time, to record it and to telecast it live. That's my first hint that, hey, maybe this fact is wrong. So that indicates that maybe I don't have to change my story yet. Then I will take something from an economic side of what was the cost of sending people to the moon? Was it possible and all? And so, this is why it's good to know a lot of stuff or to learn a lot of stuff, because then you have multiple reference points with which you can fact check. But the problem is, most of us don't have that information, right? Most of us don't have that background. And then it's actually a massive conundrum, because if you don't know much about all of this other stuff, how do you actually check the veracity of your facts? And that is that is even far tougher to do, honestly, I would say, because there's no actual reference point that you have. Now you have to decide whether you trust the person saying it or not. And this is why I again think that knowledge and power come down to trust. And this is where I would ask people to rethink who they trust and what they trust them for. Like, I would trust you to be a friend. I would trust you to have like maybe good intentions when you think of me. But, and I don't mean this in any bad way, but I wouldn't trust you to be a source of information for me, right? I would trust a news channel that has proven to me before.
No offense taken.
Yeah. So it's not like a blanket statement of trust that we think that if you trust a person, everything should be agreed with, but you need to figure out who you trust for what. And then slowly you can create that map for yourself and have some sort of reference point. I would approach that.
Right, I get that. So there's a little more I want to understand this, because when you say that, okay, when you don't have a reference point, right, what do you do? But considering how fast, the speed and the momentum that misinformation or fake news gains, do you think that would be considered as knowledge that is power? Like one of the types?
I guess, yeah. But, I think the issue, like fundamentally, there isn't actually the information. The issue is the mental state you're in with most information. Most of the times I talk to people about things, they describe the world as the scary place, and especially when you approach it in a therapeutic point of view, or you approach it from philosophy, the first thing I think people have to learn to accept is that the world is actually not as dangerous as they like to think it is. It's not as problematic or evil. We keep thinking that we need to save the world. Every one of us in different ways. Some people are like climate change, some people like Hindu Khatre mein, some people like this, some people like that. Everybody thinks the world is getting like
some people have a podcast.
Yeah. Apologies. So the point is that the world is actually not that scary. The world is actually not that dangerous. And if you think about it, Trump's not the first idiot to have ever existed. Uh, Climate change is not the first extinction event that's hit the earth. And the social issues that we deal with, the human rights violations that we see today are not the first human rights violations that we have encountered. There have been tons before. And that helps you frame things as, okay, it's bad and it's a problem. I shouldn't be passive about it. But it also doesn't mean that my world is ending, because the reason this is important, I feel, is when you approach things from a survival mindset, right? Your decision making fundamentally changes. Because at every given point, your answers are either be right or die. And that forces you to be very paranoid about being right. And then at every point, you need to know exactly the truth and only the truth. There's never any leeway to know something that might not actually exist, because your entire survival depends on it. And that puts a lot of pressure on people, because then Hannah Gadsby said this really well. And you've seen that she has a Netflix special called Nanit, where she speaks about how we as a society are far more concerned with being right, and we slowly eliminate the humanity of the things and the people that we discuss. And I think that that's heavily true, that because you're in the survival state and you constantly need to be right because you feel like you will really suffer or die because of it, you never actually are able to acknowledge the humanity of the situation. And you are never able to actually convincingly deal with the situation. So then false news becomes a real danger, because it means that you have a bunch of people who are really feeling threatened, running with misinformation, and it's actually dangerous. But if you have people who are not feeling threatened and they know something that's actually untrue, it's not dangerous. There's not such big implications of them believing in something untrue. So I think instead of dealing with the misinformation, you deal with this part first for yourself, and you find yourself feeling better overall.
Right. And what's your take on, the saying that there are two sides to the same coin?
Most of the time, yeah. It's I find this funny because one of the best examples I can think of, which I would say this is a bit controversial, so let me know if I'm crossing the line here. But when we talk about intersectionality, right, and we talk about realizing that people in certain privileged positions hold more access, hold more comfort, and it means that they're facing less hardship. And so you can create the scale in your head that becomes, a straight white guy on one end and a disabled person of color who's transsexual, who's from the lower strata of society. All of these, now you have this blueprint of who would be more comfortable and who would be more privileged. And that's great. And that's actually true. If you take the chances are, statistically speaking, that if you picked one of these people from these these demographics, the likelihood is that yes, this person on the lower end will be suffering a lot more. The problem is when you start to use this as a yardstick to gauge a person that you're talking to. This is good. This is a very good metric for society, to gauge society. It's terrible if I look at you and start to assess what kind of privileges you would have as a person, because then I now no longer look at you as an individual. I look at you as a series of factors interplaying with each other, which I don't even know the truth of, because I actually don't know what's happened to you in your life. I don't know what kind of trauma you faced. I don't know what kind of learnings you have. I don't know how you make your decision. So it would be erroneous for me to assume that this truth that is true for society becomes true for the individual.
I mean, you do know how I make my decisions. But yeah, go ahead, sir.
So this is, I kind of forgot the question. Could we go back to that?
Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. So this is where I would say that, yeah, when you're talking to an individual, there are definitely two sides to the same coin at any given point. And you can, honestly, the moment a person's upset, this idea of being irrationally upset is quite honestly stupid, because it assumes then the person's just upset because they're upset. And it ignores the fact that nobody gets upset for the sake of being upset. Everybody gets upset for a reason, So there are always two sides. Maybe their side of the story doesn't actually justify what they've done, but there is going to be an explanation, and that's true. But when you get to a societal level, then I would say that this whole two sides to the same coin thing doesn't really pan out. There are certain sides that I would not give credence to. Conspiracy theories, I'm not going to waste my time trying to figure out whether they're actually being true.
Right, like which ones?
I can think of anti-vaxxers. I can think of flat earthers. Flat earthers are like the funniest of the lot because it's very cute. It's honestly, it's important.
Did you just call them cute?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I hold it right.
Think about it, right? It's so Game of Thrones. There's this cabal. There's a ice wall all around the earth, and there is this cabal of world leaders conspiring to keep everyone in the dark. And every time a new prime minister or president is elected, they're inducted into this thing, and they never blow the whistle. And they can't run one website on their own without it crashing multiple times, but they can keep this global secret, tightly under wraps. Like over there, it's incredulous. Right?
I wonder what it would be like if how would the Venn diagram look? And I think a lot in Venn diagrams. Okay, so what would the Venn diagram look for flat earthers and people who believe in the Illuminati? And the moon landing. And the moon landing, just for fun.
The main thing is they're lying to us, right? That's the common theme, that you're feeling lied to. And honestly, I think that feeling, that's actually a feeling, it's not a truth statement. Because you either feel like you're being lied to, and so everything that you learn and you see after that, you feel like is a lie, or you feel like you're not being lied to and you can learn to trust somebody saying something. So if you have that feeling, I can show you any amount of information, you're not going to really change your mind. By the way, I don't completely, I know I described them as cute, but I think they also presented something very important, which is how do we know that we know something? All of us, they brought out the fact that, out of 7 billion people, I'd say at least 6 billion people have just blindly assumed that the earth is round. Me included for a really long time. We never wondered, we never actually questioned how we had come to that point and how we had accepted that information as true. And so the flat earthers actually brought out a very interesting discussion for how do we actually agree on things together. And I think that that's a good thing. So even though they're cute and even though their theory is very far out and nonsensical to me, on some level, I appreciate that they even did it in the first place. You're helping society in maybe not in the way you wanted, but still you are.
Right, I get that. And but then, how do you think we decide on whether what we know is what it is?
That's a very complex question with a lot of layers. I don't know whether that can be answered in like a soundbite. But I can maybe we can talk about the question they raised. How do we know things? The first thing that they pointed out though, and that we can now see is that people don't trust experts anymore, right? Tons of doctors have said do so and so on the pandemic, and a huge bunch of people have said that you're fake. I don't really trust you. Physicists will say that physics works this way, and there'll be a ton of people that say no, it doesn't work this way. Psychologists will say this, and people will check. And there is distrust in experts, and rightly so, because experts have led people in ways that they shouldn't have. And I think that it comes down to a sort of an awareness that you have. You don't want to be making decisions out of ignorance. And awareness isn't knowing information. Awareness is knowing how you're choosing to be with information.
Right.
And as long as you're aware of how you're approaching it, it doesn't matter. The truth value of the information doesn't matter. Because you can then always U-turn. If you find out that the information is wrong, you know exactly all the steps that you've taken before that, in between, right? So you can very well change your stance. You can change the way you approach life. And it's easy. But if you don't know, if you're ignorant and you just blindly assume certain things to be true and are walking through life, when those factors fail, you are left, you are left basically like without a rudder, and your ship is basically just floating away with no control. So yeah, I would say it comes down to wondering why I'm choosing to believe in something rather than what do I choose to believe in the first place.
Do you think ignorance is bliss? Why?
I was happiest as a kid, that's why. And yeah, it's all been downhill since then.
But then what does you being the kid have to do with that?
Children are generally ignorant, like you know less of the world. So the more you know the world, the slowly, I think the less optimistic you get a little more cynical. But I think that eventually you reach the spit and then you come back up and you start to get happy again. So ignorance is bliss until a certain point, and then after that, ignorance becomes the cause of suffering.
Right, but then do you think it's ignorance that allows children to be like that, or is it? I mean, the change, right? These are the children are ignorant. So do you think it's that, or the lack of heavy conditioning? Of okay, you have to worry about this, you have to care about this. This is too serious. This is a problem. This is not a problem, right?
Okay. now this again, I think becomes a social strata thing. I would say take like the typical upper middle class kid. Uh, take us, like I think we're
Yeah.
all middle class. We've all had comfortable
Yeah.
upbringings, not in terms of trauma and maybe like how bad people were with us, but at least we've had the idea that we're going to study, we're going to get
Yeah.
a job, we're not going to die at any point as kids. We're not worried about that. And um,
Did you say die at any point?
yeah,
I
the kid.
almost did. But okay, sorry.
Okay. Okay, then you are. I don't think you are an exception to this rule that I would
I'm
say I'm
always an
talking
exception in every rule.
about. So you are never really worried about these things as a child, and you are not worried about how your food comes on the table, and that automatically makes you feel a little lighter, because you're not stressed out about that. You're not constantly trying to plan for that, and that is in that sense, ignorance is bliss, but ignorance is also the cause for suffering. I think it's a double-edged sword over here. Ignorance is bliss for those that suffering doesn't harm. Ignorance is painful for everybody.
Right. And how do separate fact from fiction?
I that all nicely jumbled up. I have an idea for the way the universe is, which is complete fiction that I create every day, which I like to write, and then I'll make stories and explain things, and I'll create gods that hold power over this. All fiction. And at every given point, honestly, if you ask me, you could actually say that I'm a theist. I believe in it, in the sense that I truly believe that if a universe had a deity, it would be in that sense. But I don't use it to run my life. And honestly, I'd say you honestly should have you should have fictions for everything. It's totally fine. It's when it comes down to interacting with the person, that's when you would want to start separating fact from fiction. And the way you separate it is, can you certifiably say that no matter what, you'd put a gun to your head and say that it's true. And if you'd say that it's true, then probably run with that as fact instead of fiction. But if there's even an iota of doubt in you, you have a responsibility to not assume that it's fact.
Hmm. Right. I'm glad you mentioned this universe you created, and I didn't have to do it. So please do tell us more about it.
Oh God.
I'll come back to
It,
this, but I wanted this to come up at some point in the conversation, but I didn't want to be the one who brought it up. So I've carefully, used all my questions in a way where I'm like, okay, move this here, move this there, and then pick it up. So smart.
so okay, what do I talk about? It's a vanity project that I indulge myself in, and I think opinions on it could be varied about whether it's valuable or not. So I don't really concern myself with that. But yeah, I think I basically, as a child, I really loved mythology. I loved, my parents used to basically get me all sorts of religious books to read. And so I've kind of read the Bible. Um, I've kind of read a lot of Hindu mythology, but that's from Amar Chitrakatha, so I don't know how
I
dubious that
love our
information is.
students.
Yeah.
Anand
So
was the reason I care about anything I care about today. Yeah.
exactly, right? Those were beautiful tales that actually taught us morality as kids, right?
Yeah.
And so I used to love mythology. And then you kind of also see the roadblocks in every religion as you grow up. Amar Chitrakatha really helped us learn morality, I think, as kids. They had these beautiful tales of, just showing kids cause and effect. You do this and this is how people will
Yeah.
react. And I think that's what morality is, not about right and wrong. It's you do this and other people will think so and so of you. And then I think as you grow up, you kind of realize that they ruin these beautiful mythologies when they try to twist them into this perspective of the world. And I didn't really like that. So as a kid, I used to love creating my own mythology for myself because I felt like, yeah, the end goal or the end moral story that I want to tell myself is slightly different from the religions and the books that I'm reading. And so I started to write stories of characters and put them in weird situations. And as I grew up, I got more and more fantastical in my thinking due to weird experiences. Uh, and now I'm basically in a place where I now like to write about these gods that I've created. And each one is a representation of, I'd say, a facet of human experience. And it's just a way for me to, wax philosophical and just sound very deep. But at the end of the day, I just like the idea of, these grand forces of nature being very, uh, very petty. I think that's the word I'd use. I love the idea that these really powerful, omnipotent, omniscient beings would end up being petty and squabble over very nonsensical things. And that is, I think, why I loved Amachitra Katha so much. You'd have like, these gods like Indra and Surya and all, and Brahma, and they'll fight about these nonsensical things like who's stronger and all. And I thought that was lovely because that's what people mostly are, right? So yeah, this is why I write all of this.
What is the name? We're waiting for the name drop.
Oh, so the thing is, there's no one name. Each story has a different section and different characters. I would say I want to write books eventually. That's my future. That's hopefully my future. But I think the one you're hinting towards is the one I've been posting out the most. And right now, the story I'm writing about the most daily is something called Dwazish, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Void. And that's the title of this entire plot.
Right. And I'm waiting for that book to come out.
I think I'm going to be waiting till I die.
It's okay. I think we both have books like that. It's fun. It's just there.
Actually, sitting down and writing something is far tougher than anything else.
So much. I don't know how do you. I mean, I can't. I'm the other day. I think even you would mention this that I can't force myself to write, right? And I can't do that either. It's just a very, if I'm in the space, I will write. The space doesn't necessarily have to be happy, sad, angry, existential also. It has to, I can go through all of that and still want to write, but then the will to write is like, okay, let me pick this up and do it. And I'm handwriting the whole thing because I refuse to do it on a laptop.
Wow. You're old fashioned that way.
Slightly. But speaking of old fashioned and speaking of mythology, they say that, history is written by those in power, right? And considering that history is what we're taught to be fact in a lot of ways, in schools, through cultural references, through monuments, how much truth do you think lies in that?
Honestly, I think I'm less worried about when I look at history. I just look at whatever history calls bad, and that is where I realize the dubious nature will be. I'm very happy with the history books and narratives that talk about how good somebody was, because there's probably a facet of truth. It's of course, there's a lot more grandiosity attached to the person and they're deified a lot more. But where it can actually be problematic is the bad parts, where they talk about barbaric people, savages, all of those. The moment something from the past says that something else is bad, that is where I think your questioning should start. And that is where most likely there's a lot of misinformation. It's a narrative that's been written by the person who won, and it's not true the way the circumstances unfolded with them. And that is where I would start to look into things, find more alternate perspectives on it. And that's the age of the internet, right? You can find alternate perspectives on literally everything right now.
What is the one alternate perspective that sort of changed what you thought was fact? Recently, the most recent one.
This is, I don't know how okay this is to talk about, but it's about Shoorpanakha story from the Ramayana. Yeah. And I've just found out an alternate to it, which is the whole term Nak Katwana, which is generally used to, it's to talk about somebody's honor going away. And so I also realized that when they talk about her nose being cut, it was more actually about a metaphor for her honor being taken away. And the more I learned about these alternative perspectives on her story and her relationship with Ravan and her relationship with Ram and all the interactions, honestly, it felt a lot truer. The thing is, at the end of the day, I also am a person who believes that it's mythology, it's not real. So over here, there's no truth under it, right? Anybody can come up with an alternative statement, but if the original author kind of wanted to say that this was the truth, I kind of have to agree. So maybe this is not the best example. In terms of history, I'd have to think about this for a second. This is a lot of things that have gone on. It is, I would say, a collection of what happened to India and America. And this is, or the Aztecs as well, the colonization itself. There's this tendency of people who learn about colonization to either fall into two parts. There's people who think that colonization was good for those countries, and there are people who state that it's vehemently bad. And the truth is that while it was mostly bad, there are contributions I would call them side effects rather than advantages or contributions. They were just positive side effects that happened with it, like our railroad system, the unification of a country into one. So there are always these positives that happen. And a lot of people also forget, which I find very funny, is that when we talk about the US, we think of the empire, we think of the colonists, but the US was actually one of the only civilizations that actually, went against the colonists and the English people, the English myth, right? They said no to the British Empire. And we kind of assume that the US and the UK are one and the same. We never realized that those guys actually were fighting the same people we were fighting at the same time. And we forget that in our history.
Yeah, somewhere I think they do, detest each other also in a lot of ways.
So, of course, these are small, right? These don't change the way you need to look at history completely. But they're the first reference point where you find out that not everything was the way it seemed, I'd say. And then you can start to dig deeper and deeper into things yourself.
But speaking of not everything goes the way it seems like, there's a lot of there are times, and there have been times in history or whatever we were taught as history, and even today, where mythology, right, is we forget the line between history, what was history, and what's a myth, right, and we take grave offense to it. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to do it. I think I'm just trying to understand why do you think we do it?
I think what you're hinting at, where people get upset when other people think that what they see as history is a myth, comes down more to that I definitely see what you're talking about, but the issue doesn't lie in myth separation. I think the issue lies in religiosity itself and how our relationship with religion. And I would start off by saying that nobody is an atheist. Nobody is an atheist. Not a single person in the 7 billion people that exist is actually an atheist. Because the truest atheist is probably one who's going to, like a Diogenes. You know Diogenes? He's a philosopher, lived in his own shit, peed everyone in front of people. You would end up being that kind of person. And because as you learn psychology and you learn man's relationship with the world, the first thing you realize is that religions don't have to be supernatural in nature. Religion is actually a term I would use to describe our understanding of world order. So I've spoken to you personally about this before, but there's this anthropologist called Clifford Geertz who described religion very differently from all of his peers. At the time, this was in, I think, 1960s, 70s. I'm very bad with dates. But everybody was talking about religions being, this belief in a supernatural deity or supernatural other, something outside of the human realm that influences you, that governs the way life is. And he said, no, that really doesn't work. You're kind of on the right track. But why does there actually have to be something supernatural? He looked at religion as anything that told man that there was a world order, that told us that this is how the universe is structured, this is what you're supposed to do, this is what is moral, and this is what is immoral. And it generally comes with symbols and language and like colors, and it comes as ideology to you. And when you put that lens of religion, you realize that so many things that we believe in actually start to take religious intonations. Our belief in law is actually religious. Our belief in atheism itself is a religious nature. It has a religious nature to it. Veganism can be religious. Any belief that states that something has to be a certain way and something shouldn't is religion. And so instead of saying you shouldn't be religious, which is the way a lot of people think, that religion's poison and all, we have to start to accept that we are religious in nature, and we have to start getting comfortable with questioning whatever we consider to be our religion. People say, oh, it's easy, you should be able to question deities and all, but when I talk about killing is wrong, you can't question me and argue with me about whether that's true. But technically speaking, that is my religion, and that is where my myth I start to feel offended if my myth is questioned, and to me, my myth is history. But history states that killing has never been wrong. We're one of the few minute specimens of the universe that say that killing is wrong in the grand scheme.
Right, that's a very interesting perspective. And it's funny you mentioned that no atheist, there's no such thing as a true atheist, because I was co-moderating a room with someone I know, and this person I had mentioned to you earlier that I wanted the two of you to be in the same episode once. So we were co-moderating it, and something we spoke about, and something I realized while we were doing it is that right now, so the room was on whether religion and atheism can coexist, right? Atheists and people who are theists, essentially, polytheists, whatever, doesn't matter. But but then it came from the fact that like people said that people tell us to stop questioning things, but then when you point out that the whole basis of religion sprouting as one of its own or of something that is individual and not something that is collective came from the fact that somebody questioned it,
Yeah.
right? And also, I think the fact that an atheist only exists because a theist exists. Otherwise, it'd just be
You're reactionary. Yeah, exactly. If you're
yeah,
an atheist, you're reacting.
yeah. So I get what you're saying, and I want to understand. Do you think why? I actually want to understand further. Why do you think there's no such thing as a pure atheist?
Because everybody has some sense of how the world works, some sense of where they draw a line. You know, um, we all have this sense of morality. It might not be very simplistic and black and white. A lot of us have a lot grayer ideas of morality, but there are places where we draw the line. There are things that we will not condone. And when you find out that there is something that you don't condone, is your first step to understanding that that is your religion, and that is the place that you can start, introspecting and looking into. And that's why I don't think that there's an atheist, because I've never met a person who thinks everything is truly permitted. There are a lot of people who say that. I have found a ton of people who say that everything is permitted, morality is a social construct. But when push comes to shove in the actuality of their daily life, it doesn't actually match. Because if you really truly believe that, you would feel no resentment, no anger, no hate, literally no negative emotion, because there'd be nothing of yours that is being hurt. But if you feel hurt, you're probably religious in some ways, and let's start exploring that as a person, shall we?
So when you say okay, like when you say hurt, you're talking about if you're upset or offended by something
Yeah.
that you right. Interesting. And where do you think the line lies when it comes to the two phrases? One is so this is something I try to apply a lot, which is that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
And the second phrase is I mean, it's not actually a phrase I've used commonly, but you know how people say that there's only so much you can talk to a wall about,
Yeah.
right? So where do you think that line lies between these two?
So one thing I think about when I think of intelligence, again, intelligence is something that I think we all take for granted as being a specific thing. But when you actually look at the data that we have on it, you realize that, it's a topic that we've been discussing with thousands of years. Nobody has an actual definition for it. Nobody can agree on one. So everybody is running with very different ideas of it. So the whole question of being the smartest person in the room is where my antenna gets raised, because what does that really mean? If it means that nobody else knows a topic that you know so well, then maybe it means that you need to change the topic. And it means that there's something known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, which I love. It states that the dumber you are, the more likely you're going to think that you're the smartest person in any situation. And truly, when you are being your smartest is when you're actually feeling your most doubtful. So this is also where that Socratic statement of the only thing I know is that I don't know thing.
I know
I
nothing.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Same.
Because what it means, is there's this comfort I can take as an individual, that when I'm feeling, my stupidest as a person, when I'm getting my most worried and anxious about what the future is going to be, or do I actually know anything? Have I learned enough? That is the moment where I'm being the most open-minded. And that is the moment I will actually grow from. And it is those moments where I'm feeling so confident and feeling so happy that, oh, I know this. I have finally understood something. I have arrived, right?
Yeah.
Those are the moments I can enjoy them for what they feel like, because they feel great. But those are the moments I can also step back and acknowledge that this is probably where I'm being my most close-minded or narrow-minded and stupid about a situation. So I do understand what you're talking about, though, that maybe sometimes it's pointless to be having a conversation with people who don't know as much as you about a certain topic. And that is why my first instinct is maybe you need to change the topic then, because you will never know more in its entirety than another person. You will know more about certain things than another person, but there will always be facets that you miss. And when you're talking to them, you try and find those facets, and that's what you start discussing. Then they'll be probably trying to do the same because they don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And it's like a tennis match. You'll go back and forth, back and forth.
Right. So, where I asked the question from, right? Or let me actually. So, how I see the phrase that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, and why I want to apply it is because, like the only thing I know is that I know nothing is what I say to a lot of people. A lot of people ask me, "What do you do?" I just say, "I do everything and I do nothing." And that's all you need to know. And they ask me, "Who are you?" And my answer is, "I am everything and I am nothing." Right, and that's my standard answer. But it's been my standard for about a year and a half or 2 years, I think. But why I think that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room is when you think you're the smartest person in the room, irrespective of what that smartness is, I feel like you put yourself at a pedestal where you think that the other person is less than,
Yeah.
which I don't think is all right, because how I would see it is that you can learn something from people you least expected from, right? Or you can learn something from whoever, wherever. So, and you know, I would associate, okay, maybe the word smart with learning something. You pick it up faster, or you're able to catch it fast, or you're able to, see it. Like, someone's having a really rough day and they're holding like multiple bags, and someone just comes in, you're trying to press the lift button. And it's a very privileged example, but it's someone's trying to, like you're pressing the lift button and you're not able to, and then this little kid comes and does it for you, right? And doesn't say anything and just walks away. Like it's not even entering the lift, right? So I would look at it as like, okay, it's okay to be kind towards other people, right? It's good. It's not a bad thing, and not want anything in return. So that's how I would see it. And when I say there's only you can only talk to a wall for so long. I'm talking about, let's say, when you're having a dialogue with someone, like how something similar to what you and I have. Uh, but then when you're having dialogue, there comes a point where if suppose the person is just so vehemently against listening to you, so that's when I say wall. So that's what I wanted to know. Do you think there's a line between finding a balance between these two phrases?
Yeah. So I I think there's different rules that we can apply for how we are with other people and how we feel like other people should be with us, right?
Yeah.
So the rule I agree with exactly what you're saying. When you feel like you're the smartest person in the room, I agree with the idea that you're feeling like you're on a pedestal, right? And so I would uh, clarify it for myself with the idea that when I'm talking to someone, if I start to feel like I don't respect them or respect what they're saying, that is my moment to pause. Because at that point, I have to make a decision. If I continue this conversation, why am I continuing? If I'm continuing for the hedonic pleasure of knowing more than a person and making them feel bad, go ahead, Anand. But go with that acknowledgement that that's what you're doing. Don't hold illusions that you're engaging in conversation, because the moment you disrespect or you feel like you disrespect someone or they don't deserve respect, that's no longer going to be a conversation. And then you're hitting that brick wall. The flip side, though, when you feel like someone doesn't respect you, is far more tough, because you can't know for sure if they're actually disrespecting you. You can only know if you disrespected somebody else. So when I feel like a person's not respecting what I'm saying or not even bothering to listen to me, there again this calculus I do in my head. One is, should I disengage? But I ask myself, why am I disengaging? And if I feel like I'm disengaging because it's too much for me and I'm feeling overwhelmed talking to a person, then yes, I should disengage. But if I'm not feeling overwhelmed, there's a different part of me that comes out. I don't think people are so steadfast that they can't change their views. I think you just have to find a way to break that. And eventually, um, if you can talk to a person for long enough and you're actually having a conversation with them, you can find something that you're lucky on. And that once you find that spot, it can be something very simple. Like I would ask you, do you think that a person who's thirsty and dying of thirst should be given water? And if you say yes, that is our common ground. And I'm not using that as an argument to say, oh, if you believe in this, then all of that. But then I slowly use that to find more axioms that we agree with and more axioms. And slowly, after you get them to agree with so many axioms of yours or so many claims, they start to see where you're coming from. And then it's dealer's choice. If they want to choose to now understand you, that's up to them, or they can choose to walk away from it. But I've generally not found people to be, that brick wall and painful to talk to when I try this method. When I start to find something they can relate with.
Yeah, and also firstly, I do think that puppy passionately agrees with you. But I thought it was mine. The sound is coming from mine. I was trying to even listen. I was like, it was from mine or this is coming from mine.
There's
But
actually about 8 dogs over here, and we're
wow.
lucky that only one is barking.
Oh wow! Does the one start the other ones up?
Honestly, all of them are normally aggressive. The thing is, they know who's coming. Somebody's coming just now, so in a few minutes, they'll all quiet down.
I thought they were like a synchronized orchestra.
Yeah, when I come here, they are.
How nice! But I do want to come to what you said about intelligence and the different types, right? So, or that there's no one true form, or what do you think it is? Or there are, I don't know if you said that actually. I want to know what you think of it. So, like, what do you think about the theory of multiple intelligences?
So the only thing I have a problem with is the term intelligence, that we actually can't decide on what it means. Screw multiple intelligence. That comes later, right? What is intelligence in itself? Is it ability to learn? Is it ability to do things without not learning actually anything? And you encounter all these difficulties. So it's not a one size fits all, the term intelligence itself. So multiple intelligences work in that sense when you say that a person's a very good problem solver, or a person's a very good generalist, and then there's a person who's a very good specialist. And I would say that that's how you could distinguish intelligence. But at the end of the day, intelligence is good on a research level, a term. It's useless for people to actually navigate their lives with. It provides you with nothing. And the reason I would say that is my learnings of evolutionary psychology. So I take that as a course as well. And it has been the most beautiful discussions I've had with my students, and the most beautiful realizations that we all come to. When you're eating, you don't just shove in any food and anything into your mouth, right? You put food into your mouth. You don't eat plastic, you don't eat glass, because your stomach's not going to be able to process that. So why is it that when you approach your brain, suddenly you assume that it can process everything and it's completely domain general?
Please let my dog that.
Huh?
My dog that. Anyway, sorry.
So if your stomach is not domain general, if your stomach has only specific things that it can consume and deconstruct and work with, because of so many years of evolution into forming into this stomach that we know of today, your brain actually has a very similar history. It's not this blank slate that can interpret and deal with everything. It has certain abilities to deal with one thing compared to something else. And the more we can start to acknowledge that, and the more we can be realistic about what we can do, the more we can be realistic about what intelligence can actually mean when we talk about it. Because this is where the break happens, Whatever AI we do create, if we do create one, will never look at things the same way as us because it doesn't share our history. Our intelligence and our perspective comes from our physicality and our history. And if you can't recreate those two things, you can't create something that is similar to us. You'll create something that's vastly different.
Right. Do you think intelligence is the same as consciousness?
Oh, that's a heavy question.
I love when I give those heavy questions. Sorry.
Would you say, can I ask you a question? Actually, I realize, what would you call consciousness?
Everything I don't know.
So that would mean then you're not conscious, right?
No.
If consciousness is everything you don't know, then could
no, I mean how I would probably say it is that I know that there is a lot I don't know. right? I think that is
An
consciousness.
awareness of your limitation is what you mean.
Uh, Maybe limitation, but also not it's not limitation. I wouldn't see it as limitation. I would probably see it as something uh, like I said, right? When I tell people that I do everything and I do nothing, I have this wallpaper on my phone that says nothing changes if nothing changes, right?
Yeah.
That's simple. A lot of people look at it and they never understand it. But
Huh.
I have so many different layers of how I understand that wallpaper that I just want it there because it's a constant reminder.
Yeah.
And it's probably the only wallpaper that's stuck around and I've actually paid attention to. I've had one that says stop procrastinating, go get work done, nothing happened.
Oh, God.
But I think I see it as that I know that I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're going back to the thought that the only thing I know is that I know nothing. So I think the fact that I know that there is something that I don't know
Yeah.
is is consciousness. And now that's something I don't know, I could be wrong about, I could be right about, I could have no idea about. Or I
Yeah.
could have all the ideas and all the right ideas about. But
Well,
I think that is how I would see it. What about you?
uh, that's a part of it, I would imagine. But it also then relegates consciousness to only these very higher order beings like humans or, higher order mammals. But it's very interesting when you look at the history of the world and you look at how we came to claims of what things are. So first we said that there is life and there is no life, like say 100, 200 years ago. Over time, biology started to find out that it's not like this direct transition between life and no life and life. There's a lot of these middle stages and there's this ramp up. And so if you take that mindset of evolution and evolutionary psychology, the first thing you will realize that it would be weird to claim that there's conscious and non-conscious. And instead there would be stages of consciousness and there'd be stages of awareness of things. And so, sure, we are probably here. Actually, I realize my image might be. We're probably here, and we've probably come from here. But there are a lot of stages in between that you can actually see in our evolutionary history in different animals, the way they approach the world. And so, consciousness then it can't have a blanket term. Consciousness then becomes the closest we can come to is consciousness is some type of awareness. So awareness of certain things will make you conscious of at a certain level. Awareness of more things will make you conscious at a certain level. And you will keep going up and up until you also realize that it's not a linear progression where there can be two types of consciousness. So there's a consciousness that's leveled here and there's a consciousness that's leveled here. And though they probably linearly speaking are the same stage, they are conscious of very different things and don't share any similarity. And there's no hierarchy that you could really place them on. To make this a little less theoretical and nonsensical, I would say the best experiment I can think of is the one where they put this mirror in a jungle and they just looked at how animals responded to it. And a bunch of animals would attack the mirror because they thought it was something else. Some would run away. My favorite was a bunch of baboons, I think that went, or chimpanzees, and one by one they all sat behind each other and all just stared at the mirror for a really long time.
Hmm.
And an elephant came and the elephant started to try and make friends with the other elephant. And a jaguar came and the jaguar just stared at it from a distance because it thought it was another predator. And so each animal's response was so different. And it indicates to me that consciousness is so vastly different for each animal. So to quantify it as this one scalar quantity is problematic because it's too many different things at the same time.
Right.
Right?
And sorry, you said.
Yeah, no, I was done.
Okay, so you said that it is different levels of awareness, right?
Yeah.
So okay, I'm coming from a place of trying to look at it from the idea that knowledge is considered a form of awareness and intelligence,
Yeah.
right? Coming back to circling back to intelligence, intelligence is considered in a lot of ways. If I don't know if it's wrong or right, but then if it is, it's considered as to have a lot of knowledge,
Yeah.
right? So when you look at that, and when you look at how do I phrase this? Let me try to phrase this in my head. I had like a whole thing happening in my mind, but it's just vanished because I don't know anything. But yeah, I mean, when you look at Right, like you said, there's no one type of consciousness, right? There's no one type of knowledge, right? So I'm looking at how people look at knowledge as something where you're aware of things. And the same way, like you said, consciousness, that there are different levels of it. So do you think they ever meet at any point? When I put it
I,
like that.
I can say that if I took 10-year-old Anand and 25-year-old Anand, 25-year-old Anand is more conscious than 10-year-old. Guarantee. And that's come from my learning. That's come from my knowledge, come from my experiences. It's come from all the new information that helped me become more aware. So it's linear for me in that sense. I am more conscious now than I was before. And I will be more conscious, hopefully, when I'm 45 as compared to today. So knowledge does, I think, help with consciousness, but not knowledge in, again, information. The truth is that nobody actually just relates with information as just information. Every time you get information, you use that to make inferences about the world. The thing is, when you just take information and keep it as information, which is how school used to be, ratta maro, even in college, a lot of times, some students of mine, they will be very disinterested in a very heavy topic. And if I teach them prototype theory and cognitive psychology, which is how we learn things, and they just get stuck over there. So they can write the theory, they can give you examples that they've learned, but they can't infer with anything with their daily lives. They actually have a problem there. That's not led to awareness. That's not led to more consciousness, because there the information stopped at that level. But if you actually use the information to come down to inferences about your world, and then you can start interpreting your world slightly differently, then you're moving up that conscious scale. You're becoming more conscious than before. You're aware of all these little things that are impacting you. So yeah, I would say knowledge is heavily tied to consciousness.
Interesting. And what knowledge do you choose not to consume or absorb, and why? So when we were talking about disengaging earlier, and right now we're talking about picking up all of this information, right? Or with such we have such an overload of it everywhere. Because I find myself disengaging some things a lot. Like I will just shut it down, and I've been practicing for years, right? So now when someone comes and tells me, "Oh my God, looking at the news is very difficult," I do look at the news, but I don't look at it every day, or I don't. I'm picking and choosing what I'm looking at in
Yeah.
terms of I'll still get an idea of what is happening, but then there are certain things I don't want to see.
So
So, what do you consciously choose to not absorb, or what do you choose to not? What type of knowledge do you not choose to consume, either as a practice or as something that just happened, out of as a consequence?
okay, I can think of a good example because this is an argument I have with my mother a lot, which is about astrology.
Hmm.
I am a big denier of it, and she's a big supporter of it. And that's a very good, I would say, jumping off point for me to discuss what kind of information I don't like. But even there, I wouldn't say that I shouldn't learn about astrology, because that would be fundamentally problematic of me to say. Because then how it's like when you criticize, say, Christianity, how can you do that without reading the Bible? So you got to learn everything you can about what you disagree with, so you can know that you should disagree with it. So I don't think that I would ever say that there is knowledge or information that I shouldn't learn about or consume, regardless of the truth value of it. Because like I said before, I don't think knowledge is about truth, right? Knowledge is about context.
Yeah.
So I would say that there's never anything that I should not learn, not read, not try and understand. And when you spoke about, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a part that I disagree with, which is about, shutting off and not interacting with, like, say, the news, or, there's too much violence in the news, so I shut it off to desensitize.
But that's not what I said for you. I said that I still read it, but I
Hmm.
choose when to read it.
Yeah.
Or
So,
I'll get like what I do is I don't read it daily. In 1 week, 1 day a week, I'll just catch myself up on all the news and that's it.
hmm, I feel again, that's like band-aiding an amputation. Uh, it's not a permanent solution. It's not dealing with the problem at hand.
Yeah.
The bigger question is, why is news affecting us, right? Why is I've seen a lot of people who post saying that I'm off Instagram for a week, or I'm off Facebook for a while.
They're not actually off.
Okay, I'm going to. I can't know for sure the truth
No,
value of
but I
that.
mean, they put it up and then I see them online. I'm like, didn't you just go? But yeah, it's a scam. Everything is a scam. Sorry. go ahead.
Everything's lies. That's true.
Everything is
So, so now let's assume that I don't know the truth value of that. Let me assume that they are doing that. I've never felt the need to, and I can act ignorant and I can be like, oh, that because I don't feel the need to, everybody who feels the need to is wrong. But I do. I agree that that is a terrible way of going about it. But I looked into why I don't feel the need to, and why other people feel like they need to. And again, it comes back to that, making decisions out of fear of like, your survival. And I feel like that it has a huge relation to that, where a lot of people find the news so tough to consume because of how personal it seems to their lives or it feels to their lives. And that is why you want to disengage, because you're basically then just reading horror story after horror story that directly impacts you. And yeah, even I would agree, people should want to step back. And so while I agree that probably stepping back is a good idea, that doesn't deal with the fundamental situation, which is you're feeling threatened, you're feeling scared, and you don't know what to do about it. And no amount of reactive cutting off will ever deal with those things. The thing would be to find out what scares you, what to do about that, and how to go on with your life past that. And as you deal with that, you will find yourself feeling less, you know, uh, I would say the word I can think of is cringy, because it's not like cringy in the awkward sense, but you cringe, right, when you see painful news now. It's like your body shudders, and you'd stop finding yourself having that reaction more and more often, because you'll get a little more comfortable with approaching things you don't like. And yeah, there's this movie, right? The Chicago 7, the trial of the Chicago 7. My favorite dialogue is when one character tells all the seven protesters, he says, "You're all fighting your father, aren't you?" And that is the most important thing that all of us who feel like we need to save the world have to remember. We're not trying to save the world. We are fighting some far older demon for us. And because we couldn't deal with that demon, we have now pushed it onto this issue that we are finding. And we feel like if we will resolve this issue, we will resolve that conflict that we have with either that person or that situation or that memory. And we won't. And so we can just keep reacting, or we can not stop fighting, because I wouldn't say you should stop fighting climate change. I truly believe we should, but we will probably stop fighting it in the way we are.
Right. So what if, like, you said that you're probably disengaging or, shutting it out because you're, correct me if I'm wrong, because if you're fearful or you're scared or you feel threatened or you don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, but what if a person is not fearful and not afraid, not feeling threatened, and knows exactly what to do about it and is still choosing to disengage because they're working on the solution?
But why choose to disengage at all?
Because it doesn't surprise you anymore. There's nothing there.
Um,
I mean, in terms of, like you said, right, over time you feel that shudder and then your body slowly starts getting comfortable with it.
yeah.
So it's not like the person cannot stomach it. And in this case, I'm asking for a friend, but no, I'm talking about myself. But that's my logic, right? I don't see it as, it doesn't make me shudder. It doesn't make me uh, feel sad, and it is what is being reported. But I'm not saying that I will choose to look away from gory news. What I'm saying is that I choose to look away from news that is going to stop me from, it will put me back in a rut, right? The idea is to move forward. Like, the idea is to be able to understand that, okay, this is something, I think this is a problem. What am I going to do about it? Right? So, what then? I'm taking this up only because you said you disagree.
No, I have a very childish example.
You always have examples.
Yeah.
Such a typical teacher. Okay.
If you're done pooping, sorry for the PG-13 name, but if you're done, yeah, I know.
Why are you doing that now?
This feels grosser. If you're done pooping, you don't mentally announce to yourself that you're done pooping, right? You just get up, flush the toilet, and move on in life. If you're done drinking water, you're not like, I have done I am done with you now. I will come back to you later. When you are talking about this disengagement, it feels very purposeful. And because if it was, okay, I'm done with this, I need to get doing something else, it wouldn't warrant a mention in our minds. The fact that we're mentioning it to ourselves, it's something important that we need to remind ourselves of, indicates that there is discomfort. It's I am purposely telling myself I will not do it. And that is, so the discomfort isn't for those things. The discomfort is something else then, right? And discomfort can be so different. Discomfort can be not just fear and all of this. It can be guilt. It can be shame. And the shame can be connected with, am I doing something? Am I feeling like a victim person who just wants to feel hurt? Or do I want to be a part of the solution? That's also connected to shame, because a lot of us hate feeling like that. We want to be like, no, I'm a doer, not a victim, not a person who's, a victim of circumstance. I will control my life. And that's also a problem. That's shame. So the very fact that I feel like, oh god, this is, by the way, armchair psychology. This is not a session with you, so I don't know whether you can take this as truth, but I'm hoping that this gives you somewhere of an indication. But there is a discomfort that you're avoiding when I feel like
it's okay. I have creative privilege to cut this out, but I won't. But yeah, go ahead, sir.
So the very fact that you make the claim to yourself that I'm disengaging indicates that there's a need to disengage. There is something uncomfortable.
That's interesting because I've when I do disengage, I have not, when I remember that I have disengaged, because it's not like I disengage completely. I'll pick a day where I'll be like, okay, today I'm going to read the news, or I'll look at it from the top, check my source, see where it's coming from, and I study optics. So it's very easy for me to be able to look at what do I want to take from it, right, of what it is. So it's not like a routine thing that happens. I mean, no, it's not like a full thing that happens. Like I said, I listen to, I may not sit and read the news every day, but I'll pick a day where I'll just listen to all of it through a podcast. Because I can't be sitting and reading all of it, or I don't want the visual imagery, because I just want to listen to it, absorb it, and then process it, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is where the solutions lie. But the time I remember that I'm doing it is when someone asks me, "Oh, did you read this in the news?" And otherwise, I'm just going on with my life.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very interesting. But let's not make this. We should do this. We should do this later. We should do this one later, because that's becoming about me now. So you mentioned survival earlier. Do you think? And I think you said something on the lines of you do this because of your instincts to survive. I don't remember what you said. It was a few topics ago. But do you think we trust someone? And I'm looping back to, you said that knowledge, power, and trust do go hand in hand in some sense. Do you think we trust someone on the basis of the fact that, okay, we need to trust them to survive?
Like a non-consensual trust. Like we have no option here but to trust them.
Yes. And in keeping this, keeping the whole knowledge being power going hand in hand with trust also.
So I feel like trust can't be like a non-consensual thing, To trust is to believe in, right? Trust has the sense of, like when I say I trust you, it's not like I am forced to trust you right now. We can never actually make that statement that I'm being forced to trust. When you are forced to listen to and believe a person, I feel like you will resent them if it's not through trust. So I don't think you can be forced to trust. But I think powerful people always like to exercise dominance over people, right? And fascists, it's a very common thing. So when a fascist is making people who don't agree with them fall in line, they're not making people trust them as a person or trust their expertise. The people in that situation trust the physical dominance and violence that this person can inflict. That is still trust. And that is, they truly believe that this person will destroy my life. This person will endanger everybody I love. And that is why I will fall in line. That is not non-consensual trust. They trust them, but just not trust them to be nice. They trust them to be dangerous. And that's the trust that they have garnered in the people. So I don't think non-consensual trust can exist. I think there is trust. It's just like I said before. That trust is not once you trust a person, you trust them in every way. You trust them in certain ways.
Right, but then, like coming back to what you said to your students, this is what you said in the beginning of the conversation, that you trust me. And they said, yes, you're the teacher, and you spoke about, the power you have. Or do you think I have power over you?
Yeah.
Sorry, not do you trust me? Do you think I have power over you?
Yeah.
Now, I'm only considering, I'm taking into account what you said, right? With that, the three-way thing. And do you do you think that in a teacher-student relationship, since you are a teacher, and specifically a teacher-student relationship, because I'm not talking about the traditional teacher, anyone can be a teacher,
Yeah.
right? Your parents, your friends, your family, random strangers. So, do you do you think you trust your teacher because you don't know where you don't have another option? In a school, okay, let me take a school as an example because I'm also going to be looking at it from the examples I gave you of teachers, but I'm taking
Yeah.
school as an example, right? So in a school, you have a teacher, and a lot of people say you can't pick your teachers,
Yeah.
right? So, but if I inherently do not like the power my teacher has over me, but the teacher is supposed to be giving me knowledge which is not going to be of any use to me. How do I trust this person? But I don't have a choice but to trust this person because I need that knowledge to be able to get out of that situation.
Hmm. Um, I don't know if I can give a good answer to this because it's a bit complex. I'll try my best.
I'm
The
so
thing is, when
impressed with myself right now.
I'm doing very good job there. So when I was in school, there was a there was a lot of things I didn't trust my teachers with. Actually, no, I actually had a different. I never didn't trust my teacher to know what they were teaching me. You see, in school, I don't think it crosses most kids' mind that my Hindi teacher might not know Hindi well, or my math teacher might not know math, or my science teacher might not know science. I think that's more possible in a college environment where, because I've had plenty of students who have disagreed very vehemently with me. Some have said that I don't like what you're teaching us because I think you are wrong. And over there is no trust. And that is all right. I don't think it's possible for them to be forced into trusting me because learning is a consensual activity. You can't learn without wanting to learn. You might pick up things unconsciously, but that I don't think is learning. That is there you're learning to react, not learning information. So
But do you think that there was no trust in that situation, or there was no respect of the opinion for the opinion?
in which situation? Mine with my students.
Just where the students are vehemently, disagreeing with you. Vehemently is my new favorite word. I've been using it for the past 3 days. But yeah.
Sometimes there is. Sometimes I've actually found there's plenty of respect because some of them actually I've had classes where we end up talking for 2 hours after class because they really want to make that point with me. I don't think that's disrespect because you wouldn't be sitting for 2 hours trying to talk to me if you didn't want me to believe something. So I've generally not found disrespect too much. I honestly don't even. I don't think disrespect. Wondering whether there is respect is a place I want to go to. I want to just assume that my students generally have respect, and not respect as a teacher, respect as a person. I don't mean like they respect me as a guru. They will respect me as, oh, this person's not a complete uh, curse word here. So in terms of trust, again, I'm not able to understand how you see trust like being forced to trust a person. You can, even if you're forced because you don't have another option, and this is the only person you will learn from, then you will learn the information they give you only to the requirement that they want you to learn the information. You will start parroting things to them. Like if you're forced to learn from this person, you don't trust them to give you information, then you will learn to say exactly what you need to get out of the situation. You will learn to say exactly what you need to, the bare minimum that qualifies for their approval. So that, but you won't ingrain, it won't get ingrained. This is like kids in abusive homes who learn problem solving. They learn the exact response that they need to get to avoid being hurt by the parent or hurt by whoever the abuser is. But they don't internalize that as the truth of the world. They just know that this is how they needed to be with that person. And so once they come out of that, there is a tendency, sure, to be worried about who's going to behave like that with me next. But there's also this belief that all of this thing that I've learned is a deception. I'm wearing a mask. I'm playing a role to work with this person. It is not something I truly believe in.
Right. So, okay, maybe to make it a little more clearer, I'm going to use an example that you gave, which was about the person in the rains and bed and trying to ask someone for help.
Yeah.
Right? You're trusting that this person can help you,
Yeah.
but you don't have any other option.
Yeah.
That's a situation. This person can teach you something, whether they choose to
You're
help
not
you.
trusting them to teach you in that situation.
No, I know, but I want to, draw a parallel to the teacher conversation, because I said that different people can teach you different things, but I was using the example of a traditional teacher.
Yeah. So,
It's going too meta, I love it.
no, but the thing is, in that situation you gave me, there's the survival aspect that comes back, right? Again, in that situation, you're trying to make sure that you find help.
Yeah, that's what I
And
said. Yeah.
if you remember what we spoke about, the worst time to try and learn something is when you feel like your survival is in question, because then you won't learn. Because every decision again becomes, I'm right or I die. I'm right or I get harmed. Learning
Yes, but
doesn't happen.
but you did also say that you're exercising the knowledge of the fact that this person can help me and therefore they can trust me, right?
uh, you are exercise in that situation. You are not. I would say that most people, if they're in that situation, are not consciously aware that other people would not be helped. Right? Suppose there's an upper middle class person who's in this situation. As they're asking for help, I don't think that they're truly, because also it's a tough situation, you're panicking and all, but you're not aware that the only reason you're being helped is because people think you're affluent and that you're upper society. And so you're unconsciously exercising this knowledge of context. The knowledge that you have is not that you will be helped. The knowledge that you have is of a context that I talk to people a certain way. That when I talk to people this way, they respect me more. That is a contextual knowledge that you have. And that is not something you're always aware that you have. You know, when I talk to people, I'm very formal and very nice. And problematically so at times. But what it means that is with strangers, it's very tough for them to react badly to me. Now I've become aware of that because I'm teaching people this stuff, and also I kind of think about myself in that sense. But before I was aware of that, I never realized that this gives me a leg up compared to a person who's maybe has a more prickly demeanor, who's maybe more cut and dry. They will have less people helping them. So over here, this weird knowledge of context I have, which is that if I'm formal and nice to people, they help me more, is something not available to this person. It's consciously available in the sense that they know that if you're nice, people help you. But there's this unconscious knowledge that they don't realize that people are not helping you because you're being prickly. The main question is, why are people so mean to me? Why do people always think people find me tough and all? That's the question that comes. There's this lack of awareness here. And that knowledge helps me, doesn't help them. So that's what I think I meant.
Right. And I still do think, I get where you're coming from and I'm trying to understand it. Maybe when I'm editing it, I'll probably get a better idea. But, but then, I do think that there are instances
Where you can trust somebody because you have no option.
No option, or you don't know better. Because that's when you inherently end up learning something.
Don't know better, yeah, is not the same situation as not having an option.
Yeah, something or, no? There's an or there. There's no and there.
Yeah.
It's an and or situation.
Okay. I think let me try. I think I have an experience where I actually did my college, my
Story
master's.
time.
Yeah. I did it from a place I wasn't very happy with. So technically speaking, I was in a place where I thought I couldn't learn things and I had no option but to trust the people who were teaching me to teach me something.
It's so weird. Sorry.
It's so weird
that you did your master's from the same place where I think you did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am not very pleased with it. So the thing is, in that situation, I remember I didn't trust them. And I actually fundamentally didn't. All my learning came from outside. And it was because I didn't trust them. I can't imagine trusting them actually in that situation. So I think maybe this is a limitation of my perspective over here. I have never experienced a situation where I had no option and I knew I had no option, so I had to trust someone.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe somebody else on your show later on will be able to answer this better.
Funnily, I'm actually doing an episode on conscience and consciousness.
Oh, wow. Lovely.
It's going to be fun. But do you think we put teachers, traditional teachers only in this case, right? Traditional teachers, or familial or social teachers, like your parents or your someone who's older than you, specifically, or someone who's teaching you in school. Now, you are someone who you didn't have too much of an age difference in some situations with your students,
Yeah.
right? Do you think so? I think you would probably understand where I'm coming from a lot better. Uh, do you think we put teachers at a pedestal, or these people at a pedestal, not because we want to, but because we're told?
Yeah. Um,
Because these are the givers of knowledge, the givers of power to go out in the world, the people
yeah.
you trust. Sorry, I'm just enjoying this question a lot.
It's something that I was really curious about when I started teaching as well. The director herself, when she saw me, she was like, "Oh, you're 22. That's very young." And my immediate
Flex.
thought was, "No, no, I'm not trying to show off here."
I'm the same flex. It's a flex. It is a flex to be able to teach a university at 22.
Oh, all right,
I've
great.
had people come to me like, oh my god, Anand Mendoza.
You are not putting this in the show. So,
Of course we are.
oh god. So when I started teaching, I was very worried that they wouldn't take me seriously. It was something that I knew I'd have to kind of find a way around. I'd have to also prove to them, honestly. And the funny thing is, my father's also a teacher in college. So and he's 70 now. So we have two perfect opposites, to talk about our teaching experience. And every time we talk about it, the way students interacted with him was so different. So yeah, what I experienced with me ended up being a lot more disagreement, a lot more challenges, a lot more I do not trust what you say, but at the same time, a lot more honesty. And trust me, I will take any amount of disagreement when it comes with honesty. Because when you have a lack of honesty is a disengagement from conversation, in a lot of ways. If my student is not able to tell me that they disagree with me because they think I'm too high up compared to them, they're not going to learn something. Our class is not going to be productive. So as much as they would disagree with me and fight with me on things, there's so much honesty. And there's another thing, which is there's a trust in a shared experience that they have with me. They'd be expect me to be able to relate to a lot of things. I didn't always relate. Sometimes they have to explain things a little more to me, like the term woke, which they taught me in class. It was a lot of fun. But there are other times where when they talk about relationship issues, because it's a psychology class, right? We talk about relationship dynamics. Where yeah, we talk about Tinder a lot. Oh my God, that used to come up so much because I think online dating is something that they all engage in a lot. And so we talk about it from a social construct perspective.
I really
And
want a recording of one of your classes at some point. Just to see.
oh God. Yeah, it's a lot of ranting from my individuals, just like this. But yeah, so there's this trust in a shared experience, which I would love. There's an expectation that they would have that I would understand what they're feeling and going through, which I again loved. So I think it was a situation of there's some pros in this end and there's some pros in this end, and there's some cons with being a younger teacher and there's some cons with being an older teacher. But at the end of the day, I feel I prefer being a younger teacher more, or at least getting that same equation with my students. I'm hoping that even when I'm 45, if I have students and I'm teaching somebody, I would be able to recreate this equation. And I really think that that's beautiful because it was very comfortable. There is a certain sense of informality in our class. There was this idea that, oh, he's not going to throw us out of class, he's not going to punish us, and that makes things easier. And funnily enough, without that threat was also a lot less disobedience. I never actually had to worry about my students being problematic because they knew that they didn't, like, there was no reaction. Most problematic kids are actually reactionary. Like, oh, you're telling me to shut up, I'm going to talk now, what you going to do? Most of the time, if I found someone talking in class, I'd just be like, what are you doing? Look at yourself. And they'd agree that it was stupid of them to, and they'd stop talking. So I feel like this has been my experience. I like being younger as a teacher.
Do you think the word problematic is problematic if you're just using it and throwing it around? Not you particularly,
Yeah.
but in general, when you are talking about it from either from a perspective of you know that okay, this is a problem, this is a problem. Yes, it is a problem, but you're not talking about the solution. You're just saying there needs to be a solution. We know there needs to be a solution, and I'm not saying we. I mean, I'm trying to give the
You're
opposite.
using the collective, yeah.
Yes. So, and no, I'm also not, otherizing the person who's saying that this is the problem, because when the person points out the problem, that's when you acknowledge the problem because you can't see it. Like you said about the flat earthers, right? Something that very interesting that they pointed out, not a problem, but an interesting thing they pointed out was that how do we decide what we know is what we know?
Yeah.
So, how do do you think the word problematic is problematic? I've been repeating the same question multiple times.
I get the question. Yeah. Um, I This is, I think, where when you're talking about being detached or objective about information that you've done comes in, where I tell my student, so there was this particular batch of fourth years. We were taking lectures on happiness, and in the first session of the topic, I asked a class of 50 students, how many of you are happy? And like three raised their hands. And actually, no, I think for this question, nobody raised their hand. So then I asked how many of you have experienced happiness in the last 2 years, and three raised their hands. And that was very terrifying for me. And the more we looked into it, the more they spoke about how problematic the world is. They were like climate change, uh, rampant capitalism, corporatism, the desire to be productive, the rejection of human needs. All of those were the topics that they spoke about. And I found that really sad because, in some sense, I was thinking to myself that as teachers, we're teaching them all of these exist, all of these problems exist. And it's very sad that we're not equipping them with a way to deal with it. So all they're left with is feeling really terrified and feeling really bad that this is the way the world is, this is the world I'm going out to. And I wanted to help them find some way of being able to combat that, like uh, some way. If we talk about that religiosity again, there is disorder in their world. There was no order to the way things work. And that is very terrifying. They needed some sort of religious feeling for them to connect with and some sort of purpose, right? So I think that when we look at these tangents or these phenomena that go on in the world, I don't think we should be very caught up in is it a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a thing. And if we try to change the world, we're going to end up very depressed. Because out of the 100% of people that try and change the world, 99% fail. And of that 1%, only about 1 to 2% will change the world in the way they want. Most of them will have unintended consequences and actually end up doing a lot of different things. So I don't think that we as people should be wanting to change the world. It makes us very unhappy. It makes us miserable. So even when we talk about like, is the word problem becoming problematic? I can see consequences of it. I can see that, yeah, youth are very cynical, but I also see it as an ebb and flow, that it's a consequence of people being too optimistic before. And eventually it will balance out. One thing about cancel culture that I find very interesting is the case of Aziz Ansari. So he got somewhat taken down by the Me Too movement. And later on, he didn't, because it turns out that the claims against him didn't hold up enough to claim that he had actually violated a person's consent, and it was a misunderstanding of situation. He did a stand-up special after that, and he spoke to the audience. I would suggest that anybody watching this, however few, we should definitely check that out.
However few.
Because it's me talking, not because
You may have some faith in yourself and me.
And
Self-deprecating people will not be able.
fair enough, fair enough. So, okay, who was watching this? Check out Aziz Ansari's stand-up special where he talks about this and he talks about his experience. And my favorite part was where he didn't talk about how it was a problem what happened to him. He spoke about, yeah, it was a bad thing. Yeah, it wasn't necessary for him because he didn't do anything wrong. But he understands why it happened in the greater context. And it was all right because it was necessary that you don't detract the movement because of the one occasion that the movement was wrong in. And therefore, he was still a huge believer in it. And I still truly, I like the idea that people can cancel people. I like that people are reminded that they have that power because it makes everybody else tiptoe a bit like, okay, I can't just, walk around the place and do what I want. And people who are truly cancelled for trivial things don't really get cancelled. Like sure, they will lose that one project that they were working on. They might lose a bunch of fans maybe, but their careers don't go for a toss. They can find a way back. And I've not heard of a person who's like Kevin Spacey is the best example I can think of,
That's
where
all to
he, yeah, he had assaulted somebody. He then tried to pawn it off by trying to come out as gay when his confession, and then he expected like there to be no repercussions, and sure, he got cancelled heavily, but he's still out there, by the way. He posted this YouTube video where he enacted his character from House of Cards, the very devious guy, and he spoke about how he was coming for his enemies or whatever. Video has millions of views, millions of people saying we stand by you and support you. I don't see this guy as being cancelled at all. So I don't know. I don't see the word problem as being problematic on a global scale. I feel like it's just a need of the hour, and eventually it will just the scales will tip back in the other way, and it will fall out of fashion.
No, but I mean, I heard you say problem being problematic. What I meant is the word problematic being.
Oh, I prefer the term problematic as compared to this is terrible, this is unjust. How dare we have a person in our past who was racist? How dare we celebrate a person like the Mahatma Gandhi issue about did he do things with women? The issue of George Washington, did he own slaves? Should we respect him? It's like, why would you judge people for? It's problematic. It's a problem. Yeah, there's probably a discussion that we can have, and we can say, hey, they were not that great.
But in the present was my question.
As in,
Like people in the present, not about people in the past.
J.K. Rowling is the best I can think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she used to be like, I would say, the champion of diversity, and now suddenly she's the antichrist of diversity. I find, and most people I talk to are very vehemently against her, and she's a TERF, right? I think that's the term, trans exclusionary radical feminist. Where she's a feminist, she's very strongly for women's rights, but she doesn't believe that trans women are all women. And there's been a lot of backlash about her for that. There's also this idea, I think, that she shoehorns diversity in characters without the story actually hinting at it, like making Dumbledore gay after he died, just because she thought it would garner support. That's the claim. But when I look at her, I feel like her heart's in the right place, but she's old-fashioned. She's like, that aunt who has problematic views, but you're not going to change her mind. Just let her be. Like, that she actually, at the end of the day, when you talk to her, that she's good-hearted and wants to help people. She just has views that might not make the most sense anymore.
Yeah, the whole Edith Blyton and Kipling thing. It was
exactly.
I don't know what to feel about it.
So I feel like you're right. We made this connotation that the beliefs you have indicate the character you possess, and that is fundamentally untrue. But I think people will also eventually just see that, because this is not, things only last because they work. Racism lasted because it worked in a lot of ways at that time. Not condoning it, but it worked for a reason, right? When things don't work, we chuck them out as a society. And so if this doesn't work, it will show itself in the future, and people will just stop doing it after that.
Right. So I'm coming to the question I remembered, and then my last question for you is, I think you spoke, when you mentioned something about if my student cannot tell me that they're not, I think, enjoying their lectures or their grades, could you correct me which one I was talking about?
If they can't be honest with you.
If they can't be honest with you, right? Or they're keeping it from you.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think in any form of dialogue, right? Because you said that would be the end of dialogue.
Yeah.
So do you think that when someone lies or someone keeps something from you, and when I say that, I'm also maybe talking about, when you grow up and you go like, everything is a lie, you told me everything's going to be okay after my 10th, I don't have to study. It's a lie. And at the end of the day, and we kept the whole, okay, you have to go into this rut of doing things away from this child. So then you grow up and you're like, everything I've learned is a lie. Like people thinking that Picasso was around in the 1800s are going that my life is a lie. Right? So, I mean, that is a very bad example for the question. But do you think that when someone lies or keeps something from another person, that they don't trust the person with the truth?
Definitely. It's in child psychology, it's a big thing that we actually talk about, which is, especially if you get like a kid in a therapy situation and you talking to the parents, you find out where the parents are dumbing down things for the child or lying to them. And you start to tell them that that's actually, don't do that, not good.
Yeah, but no
Don't-
parent likes being told that.
Yeah, so you do it you sugarcoat it and you walk them through why. And honestly, if you explain to them why and you show them consequences of it and all, most parents will accept it. If you don't go out and say, hey, listen, you're being a bad parent, don't do this. That's the best way to tell them, for them to feel antagonistic towards you. But what was I saying? Yeah. So you as a parent do not want to lie to your kid. It has too many consequences. There's never a lie that works because it works now and we will deal with the consequences later. It always ends bad. So even as a teacher, I would never actively lie to my students because I know that it's dangerous. One thing that I think is a very simple urge that can come when you're in a classroom is when your students ask you about something you don't know about, you know, and then your pride comes there. Your pride says,
You can
give
just say,
them
I'll
an
get back to
answer.
you.
You can. I would still say that the more honest thing, which is what I tell them that I don't know. And I
Yeah.
tell them that I will try and find as much as I can about it. And I will try and tell you what I think. But even that won't be the truth. It will be my opinion. And so I try and separate what I know that I teach them and from what I have an opinion about and I teach them. So I don't teach them my opinions as facts because that would be unfair. And I let them know because then it's a lie, you know, because the moment they find out that an opinion of mine is a problem, there's now a layer of distrust where everything that they hear from me later on will be a problem. So it's like with kids whose parents have lied to them about, your dog didn't die, it went to a farm, or yeah, like you study till you're 10th and you're fine. They don't trust their parents. They don't trust their parents to, not that they don't trust their parents to know things. Everybody says my parents are very good hearted, but they don't trust their parents to know and help them and to be able to give them good advice during decisions. That just goes.
Okay. Okay, then we agree on one thing. Because I think that if someone is lying or keeping the truth from you, and that includes myself,
Yeah.
because whoever says that they've never lied is lying.
Yeah.
So, keeping the truth, white lies, all of that, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you end up assuming another person's capabilities, which is not fair.
Exactly. You're infantilizing.
Yeah. And also, what do you use?
Infantilizing them.
Like thinking of them as children?
Yeah. As an infant.
I think children are the smartest beings on this planet.
In some ways, yeah.
Yeah. The West is so profound.
Yeah.
But anyway, but I do think that, right? I feel like how if you like, and then it's any relationship, whether it's parent-child, partner and partner, or whether it is student-teacher, or friend,
Yeah.
right? Or colleagues, whoever, or politicians and subjects. I shouldn't call them subjects, citizens.
Yeah.
Depends on which country you're in. But that's the thing, right? I always think that if you are lying, and in my head, a white lie, keeping something away and not sharing the whole of what is your reality with that person is that like one person's reality is not the same as the other person's reality. Your idea of the truth is not the same as my idea of the truth.
Yeah.
So if you are when you keep it away, you don't trust that person with your idea of your reality,
Yeah.
and I think that hurts a lot more in a lot of ways. And and yeah, I'm glad we agree on this. Coming to my last question.
Sure.
So, what do you think, what do you think is power, other than knowledge and trust? Since you mentioned trust, other than these two things, what is power? Because you told me what your students think of it, or what you ask your students, but I want to know what you think.
So when I spoke to you earlier about how people consider power to be a dirty word, and I want to teach, at least when teach my students, I want to teach them to not look at it that way. It's because at the end of the day, power is motivation, right? Power is the energy that gets people to do something. And if you didn't feel like you have the power to do something, you wouldn't do it. And, when we talk about like a term like inequality, which is such a heavily loaded term, because we would immediately say that we don't want inequality. But the truth is, you can't have an existence without inequality. Because if there is no point A and no point B to get to, there's nothing to do. Inequality needs to exist, and that is what motivates people to live. That is what motivates people to go out and do something. It doesn't need to be inequality of classes, which can go, but there's an inequality between my students. I'm a teacher and they're a student. There's an inequality. They might want, not all of them, but some of them might want to come to the level that I am, that is become a teacher themselves. That is what spurs them. That's what motivates them. That's what gives them the power to actually go ahead and do it. And so to me, power is also motivation. So power is dominance, power is trust, and power is motive. And these are the three flavors, I would say, that we encounter power through our lives. And the dominance one is the least valuable. I feel like it was valuable in a different time, and it's not valuable now. It was valuable in our past, when you had a lot more distrust, you had people actively coming to kill you and enslaving you. That time definitely start being dominant, don't trust, and all of that jazz. But now the world we live in, we don't need to be dominant anymore. I think that's also why masculinity and all are being upended right now, because the idea of power as dominance is fading, and the idea of power as trust and motive is becoming more and more commonplace. And as that gets more commonplace, I think our idea of femininity is something that becomes more prominent. Men start to take on those characteristics, and that's the situation there.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, the idea that dominance equals masculinity is also changing.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, very beautiful. Okay, so suppose we had a TLDR for this entire episode. Do you think knowledge is power?
Yes. Okay. In some ways and in some ways not.
Okay, good. Thank you. So that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for doing this. And
thank you for calling me.
Always. So much fun.